And we're live, folks, back again. This is your host of Lit Literature, JP, aka The Demon. And we are here with...
The Hitman.
The Hitman. Oh, I hear a cat over there. We may be visited today, folks. We'll see.
Oh, no, the cat is not being harmed. He's just being a cat.
Yeah, I think he's frustrated because he's trying to get into the fridge. But anyway, we're here for a special one-off episode. Really because we just wanted to celebrate Robert Jordan. His birthday just came and passed, and recently Warriors of Altaii was released.
Yeah. October 6th or
8th.
Yeah.
Was it 6 or 8? Well, anyway, it was right around there. And
me and Jeffrey are both big fans of the Wheel of Time series, and we read out throughout high school and college. And
that's right.
So I was excited to read his first book that was published almost 40 years ago.
That's amazing. 40, and it is his very first published book. Well, kind of published. Not really published. His first written book, completed book. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. The real interesting thing about it was to go back in time and kind of read his... it still felt so much like him, but yeah. But I'm sure we'll get into that. But anyway, we wanted to release a side episode because obviously our group is deep into reading Brent Weeks' the Lightbringer Series. And actually, the director and I were discussing, is there a way for us to get the Wheel of Time in? And I know you brought it up to us.
Yeah, I want to do it.
Because you want to do it, and we want to do it. But we realized if we did it on our normal schedule, the Wheel of Time series would literally take a whole year for our read-along format. Doing whole books at a time. However, you could let us know what you think about this, folks, if you're watching this particular episode. We do want to do the Wheel of Time. Some of the fans have mentioned they want us to do the Wheel of Time. And what we realized is maybe we could sneak 4 book clumps of the Wheel of Time in between some other series, which would be kind of fun. But it's something that we were talking about. It's not set in stone yet. Let us know what you think if you have any ideas. I think a fan actually recommended that to us. Sneak in 4 book chunks and in between series and see how that goes. However...
That's a lot to talk about. 4 books.
I know. Well, I think what we would do is do each book, but we would do like accelerated pace. You know what I mean? Like take a month off. Basically do a book a week, which... I don't have faith everyone would be able to keep up with that pace, but maybe we would be able to do a book every 2 weeks, something like that. Or maybe it's a 2-book clump,
Yeah.
But anyway, The Wheel of Time is one of our favorite book series, which led us to check this out. What are you drinking today, Ben? I'm just curious.
I'm drinking Stone Fear Movie Lions.
I like that one, actually.
Yeah.
I do really like that one. Very good. And I'm actually drinking Nose Over Tail. Pollyanna. 7%, but it really tastes light. It's very light. I guess it is a lager, Maybach lager. But so back to the book. Besides our barbarian ales, although in the book it seemed like they drink wine all the time.
Yeah,
barbarian wines might be even better for that. What was your overall impression?
I thought it was a good book. It wasn't a great book. Doesn't stand up to the Wheel of Time. You could tell that there's a lot of stuff he brought forward to the Wheel of Time, and you could tell he really grew as an author for, I don't know, maybe 15 years later when the first Wheel of Time book came out.
You're right, it was about 15, right?
Yeah.
Or was it even more?
It was around there.
Okay. Wow, I can't believe...
Well, at least published. But I liked it, and one of the reasons why I liked it was because I'm a big fan of the Wheel of Time and Robert Jordan, so I got to see his first book.
I don't have it down here. I was actually going to check the publication date. Yeah, I was curious, but...
I got to see his first book that he wrote, and that was exciting for me. But I could see also there was a lot of loose ends and stories, threads that didn't go anywhere.
Right.
But overall, I liked it.
Yeah.
It was a good self-contained book, surprisingly, since it's Robert Jordan. It's only, 400 pages maybe?
Yeah. I felt the same way. I actually enjoyed it. And I think he said he thought it was terrible by the time he was writing books later down the line. But I mean, how many authors say that? They all kind of say that. They get better as they go.
Yeah, they keep getting better and better.
But it was, I think he said it was like a lucky charm for him. So he always kept it around because he actually got it sold. It was his first book that he sold. But then he didn't know anything about the publishing industry. So he decided he would ask in a letter to the publisher a little bit of a contract change. And the publisher was like, heck no. Beginning authors, they take what we give them. And they don't get to negotiate at that time. So they, instead of saying no, they just dropped it. They're like, sorry, we don't want your book anymore. So, but he decided then that the good thing is that even though that happened to him,
twice.
He proved to him that he could sell a book. Yeah. And I think the second time he got it sold, they ended up not publishing it. First or second time, either way, he met his wife through the process, who's an editor and who is... famously edited the Wheel of Time books. And so to him, it not only was important that it led him to his wife, but also it proved that he could write. And it was a barbarian novel, which led him to his next gig, which was the Conan novels, which was really kind of neat to understand that progression. Because, barbarian, it kind of proved he could do it. The story was good. And he was already, it's like even they said in the beginning, he was already kind of starting to formulate this world that becomes the spine of the world, the Wheel of Time,
the backbone of the world. I think in this story, it's like the backbone.
Yeah, the backbone. So he's already starting to think about the spine. It's just really cool.
The spine, and then you have the ale. How do you say them? Would be the Barbarians in this story.
Yeah, the Altaii.
Altaii, and then
the Altaii.
The main character, Wolfgard, is pretty much a Taverdian by the end of the story.
Right.
And then, like, the Wise Woman and the Aes Sedai.
Aes Sedai, yeah.
Creatures.
Super cool.
Also, in this time period, which was really unusual, this was late 70s, early 80s, that a woman had powerful roles in this book. They were leaders and were listened to, and not just... hanger-ons of the main character.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And not only that, even one of the main bad guys, what motivates her is that she doesn't like her place in the tribe, in the barbarian tribe. She wants more power. And she kind of goes about... She doesn't, unfortunately for her, she doesn't have any wise woman powers. And she also doesn't have... she's not a man in terms of commanding war because of this in this culture. So she kind of still rises to a really high power in the tribe as the slave training mistress.
She was an important person, but I don't think she had any real power.
But she wanted more, right? She wanted a lot more.
She wanted to be a wise woman, and she got tested 6 times and got denied.
Denied.
But she reminds me of that one wise woman from the Wheel of Time who wanted to be a wise woman but couldn't. I mean,
which one was that?
Who wanted to be a channeler. She was a wise woman, but couldn't.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She was awesome.
Yeah.
She was, super awesome, but she couldn't actually channel. Yeah. She
had
she could channel, so little that it didn't matter.
I don't think she could channel at all.
She couldn't channel at all, okay. She could dreamwalk, though, or no?
Maybe. I'm not positive on that. But she
we'll
was
save
always
that for Wheel of Time discussion.
Jealous of the other people and wanted more power.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's right.
Why she betrayed them.
That's right. There was another woman who could barely channel and was the opposite of her. She approached it differently, and everyone was terrified of her, even though she had no power. Oh. And she always thought it was funny how the Aes Sedai ranked you by how much you could channel, and in the Wasteland, what were those people called? Boy, we gotta reread these books. The
A-I-E-L.
Aiel. That's it. Thank you, Ben. The Aiel, on the other hand, didn't rank you at all for that. It didn't matter if you could power.
Makes more sense to me because it's just like a muscler. You're not gonna have a leader with a bunch of musclers who's dumb lead you into battle.
Well, that got the Aes Sedai in a bunch of trouble. But now we're going down that path again, folks. We'll save that for when we talk about the Wheel of Time. That we have to do it. It's gonna be too fun. But, you could tell that he was really formulating a lot of this. And then I did enjoy... It was interesting because this book was written from the first-person perspective, from Wolfgar. And so everything was I. And, it was... when I read those kind of books, like Dresden, they're kind of popular in the noir style because you could control what you're seeing and not. But it was so interesting to read his style that way. Yet it felt like his style, even though it wasn't third person. We weren't, So that was really interesting to me. I'd be really curious if his Conan books are first person or third person. I'm not sure which one he spun those ones out. Maybe you could answer us, folks. I haven't read the Conan series, but that was cool. But it was neat to read about their culture. What makes them barbarians versus not barbarians, right? Yeah. And how they justify it.
It's really funny because everything that people claim made them barbarians is like, no, that's pretty civil. But like all the other things that they did, I think, man, that's so barbaric.
Yeah, they had some civil, and actually they tried to defend the barbarian, and they did it in an interesting way, like with survival and the way that they live that leads to it. And you got one of the best examples was what was it where they were talking about how it's barbaric that you
eat first.
Oh yeah, eat first. That was it. That was a great example. Like so, how the leader eats first.
Yeah,
and
the leader eats first, and then no one else eats. And then during times of there's this event that happens that only has happened twice for him. Yeah. That the warriors eat first, and then the other people only get like the scraps, pretty much, which makes sense. They just defend the tribe from some monster I can't remember the name of.
Yeah, so they had a few different monsters. There were two, and I got the sense, even though I didn't know this for sure, but I got the sense that because how they explained how like people were yanking things out of time and bringing them in, that they were almost like dinosaur or Ice Age monsters, like animals that came. Because they also described their like patterns, like in the summer and the winter, and you had different ones, and they both needed those for hibernation because of the climate. And it was almost like the in that world when those people were starting to pull stuff out, they just accidentally pulled out some animals that were like from the dinosaur age kind of thing. Although we're not really sure on that. Maybe I missed something. I don't know if you did. I couldn't find like really detailed. I didn't look hard, but just through reading it, I didn't get any really detailed descriptions of what those creatures looked like.
The only description we got was of the runners, I believe.
We did get a little bit of the runners.
And they were like human-like, except with no speech and like no real thought pattern. Like they couldn't ever negotiate with them. It's just, and they fight to the last. Like doesn't matter.
Just kill. They go like blood rage. Yeah, that's right. They were almost like alien. Felt like aliens, or like maybe like old school. Crazy Neanderthal type humanoids, right? Because they were humanoid-ish, right?
Yeah, but they're also so alien in their behavior. Right. They would just run in a straight line, never deviate unless they saw prey, and then if there was 10 of them and 100 of you, they would still go at you and get cut down, trying to kill you or eat you.
It's almost like it's so interesting. It reminds me of a game. I remember that game that came out on PS4 where you're like a tribe and it's like tribal, but like the AI systems went haywire. Horizon, I think it's called. No, not Horizon. But like you're a girl and you're essentially like a hunter and all the animals are like the robots.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
It is Horizon, okay. It kind of reminded me of that. Like maybe it could be something like that where they just like are some rogue semi-biotic AI from another future world that had like one job. They got pulled in here and all they do is basically reproduce and hunt for food. And you could just kind of... But who knows? Like that's the cool thing about this book is it didn't turn into a series. And Robert Jordan didn't fully flesh out the world after, he started to build it. It was kind of fun for him. He might have started to do it. So you get all these interesting tidbits that are almost like maybes or what ifs. Or you kind of get a feel that the world could grow, but...
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's tons of room for growth in this book of the stuff that never went anywhere, like the Most High. Yeah. Well, apparently the original species on this planet. Yeah. And then they brought every other species into it. And the Lanterns, the Altaii, the Runners, were all species they cultivated.
Yeah, cultivated. And then when everything went to shit, they just ended up kind of, starting their societies.
Yeah. They kind of like broke out and they all went their own ways, and one group formed the Altaii. And
yeah. I was super curious what the, because like I could understand all that stuff, and they kind of like, and then you get the sense that the Wanderers, well, in this case, the Wanderer, the woman who comes in, she's like from kind of the future. She's clearly like a woman from a world like ours.
Yeah, pretty much
like
all
fur coat, like a historian at school or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny because he's like, oh, you have all these light clothes and then a fur coat. Like, what are you gonna do with that?
What is the point of this?
It's just a coat we take off when you go inside, and it's nice out.
Yeah. That was pretty funny. Yeah. But it was like, and then they talk about the magic of how these wanderers will come in and they have like guns. And they'll be like making a joke about how it holds magic. But then they actually have magic too, which is really interesting because we don't know how it quite how it works, Yeah. Like, obviously men can do magic, but we find that...
Can they?
Well, they said that there can be men who become like... What do they call them? Sisters of the... And she's like, well, I guess we should call them brothers. Every once in a while it happens.
Yeah,
but culturally, most men totally shy away from magic. And it's mostly women. And also, mostly women are wanderers. And they kind of explained that...
Women are wanderers.
All women. But they kind of explained that there might be some kind of a lie about that.
Really? I don't know that. I remember them saying... that the men would just die during transport.
But then he called them a lie. He called it a lie to the Altaii or
the Most High.
Most High.
Because if they're all women who came, then they couldn't procreate.
Yeah.
They couldn't build societies that they built.
Maybe, but then because he kind of called them out on it, and he was like, "Oh, okay, well," but he said there was something. Maybe there was something in between. Yeah. You could tell that it was something that Robert Jordan was toying with, but didn't like. He was just kind of like, this might be a little seed that I can develop into a maybe, maybe not kind of thing.
But like I was thinking, like, okay, you got wanderers and they're always women, like in the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And then like those are just like people who got trapped or accidentally brought into the world. But,
like hit a weird portal.
Yeah, but if people like actively try to pull someone in, can it be a male then?
Yeah.
Like when they're trying.
Seems like they did it in the past.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Wolfgar was insinuating. Like, obviously, if what you said is true, that you pulled all of us in, then why would it be that only women can be wanderers, Yeah. So that's something that's kind of left unexplained. We just have what one guy said and what the other guy said. And then, he lets him off, actually. Yeah. He lets him off. Yeah. He gets saved, that all-high guy. Yeah. Most high guy. And... I don't know if you got this. It's kind of like they used to have like all this technology.
Yeah.
But now I had to imagine when after the Altaii took the city, and then the guards, the kind of like idiot guards, just decided to catapult the Altaii ship. I just imagined like the most rickety like box like they like turn around and kind of like flutter away smoking, and I was just laughing because like I had the most cartoony vision in my mind of how that worked. I could see that being kind of like a semi-comedic moment if it was like cinematic, if you made a cinema, how you add those little comedic moments in there.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the cultures maybe. The Altaii is the main barbarian group. What'd you think of their culture overall?
I guess I'm going to stick with barbaric.
It seemed pretty barbaric. They were definitely like... They remind me like partially of barbarians that we think of like ancient Germanic barbarians and half Mongols.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Because they had like some Mongol tendencies with the horses and the bows and the lances and the hunting too. Yeah. And so I was kind of like, I wonder what kind of barbarians they seem like a fusion of what we would think of.
Pretty much. And then like the things like I said before, like the mercy killing, like he got called barbaric for that. I'm like, it's not barbaric. That's actually a nice thing to do. It's unfortunate
for that guy's case, but it definitely was nice to do.
Yeah, like I can see that. You wounded. And they don't have like great medicine. They have some, but if you're dying, why wait a day and a half to bleed out when you can just
Just gonna sit there
Personally.
impaled, hating it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's that, and then the one thing about the culture that seemed odd, and I didn't quite get, like, I understood the concept of women's justice,
Yeah.
but, like, why did she employ it there?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's gonna kill her, and then not to get any information out of her, not to, like, anything else, just tortured her, and then, like, now you're a slave. Instead of just, like, be done with it and kill her.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I like the concept that they have this kind of women's justice that's, like, outside of the law of man there, that came from some clearly deep root that he didn't fully explore yet. But I do understand, like, it's almost like because it was a single book, and because, like, he couldn't, like, dive in any deeper or get any information out of it, he just let that, like, piece go for the film.
Well, I understood, like, I could get, like, the woman's justice.
Yeah.
It's a way for them to diminish their own justice, kind of like the woman's circle back in Emmons Field.
Women's circle. I think that clearly there was a seed, right, of that in Emmons Field with the women's circle. I totally agree with that.
What I don't understand is why, I must have called the wise woman, invoked it there to save her.
Yeah, like what the purpose was? Like, why not just let him kill her?
Yeah, that's what he wanted, and he just tortured her, and then made her a slave.
Yeah.
And he didn't want her as a slave. He's like, what am I going to do with her?
Yeah. Maybe that was the start of something that she, as a wise woman and doing the bones, like, saw into the future, but we just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Now, right now, granted, I'm, like, kind of trying to justify it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm looking forward, and it didn't become that, but that is a good point.
Yeah, I thought, okay, maybe she invoked it because with God killing a woman and would have been really looked down upon.
Yeah, maybe she didn't want him to, like, she knew he wanted to, he was going to be, like, a key leader, and she didn't want him to make a mistake.
But then, like, they found out that she was a traitor, and, like, the woman, like, oh, just kill her, and then one of them said, oh, make her a slave to him.
Yeah.
And it's like, mine, let's just kill her, get it done with.
Yeah. That magic binding system, that it's really interesting, because, like, how oaths work in this world with magic, and how, like, the binding system works is really interesting, because I was thinking about it. I'm, like, almost wondering if it was, like, what became the collar thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, later, you're, like, or the compulsion. It was, like,
compulsion, or even the water bond.
Right. Like, super interesting.
So there's, like, a lot of stuff that could have gone off.
Yeah, you kind of see seeds of, like, this stuff growing in his imagination. He put it in this book, but it wasn't... It's, like, it grew into so much more as he matured.
Yeah.
Which I'm really happy about. It's almost like I'm so happy that he didn't actually publish this book, because he was able to, I mean, like, what it became was the Wheel of Time, and it just, like, was so, not that he wouldn't have fleshed this stuff out too, but we definitely would have had something different later on then. So, but, who knows? Maybe we'd be reading a 12 to 14 book series about the Warriors of Altaii instead, But I think I really like how he thinks about certain things, because he adds it. You could tell he did it in Wheel of Time. Like, he flipped a few things. He likes the idea of all these cultures, and, like, how when the world changes, things change and cultures change, and so you might have a culture that's based in one thing become something totally different over 1,000 years, and it was really cool. And I've got the sense that he started that kind of stuff here. Like, you got the idea that in the Wheel of Time, the Aiel they're actually, like, Nordic people genetically. Like, they're tall, they're super white, they've got, like, red blonde hair, blue eyes, and they live in a desert, and they're like a desert culture, and they've become a desert culture because of the fracturing of the world, whereas if before they were maybe something totally different.
They were city people. They were the servants to the Aes Sedai. And they were super peaceful.
Yeah,
they followed
like
the way
war,
to leave,
exactly.
pretty much.
It's just super cool because, like, over time, how he toys with that. And you get the sense that he started with that. He didn't elaborate on it, but you get the sense that you wonder what led to these barbarians becoming, like, the way that they were. And you almost get the sense that maybe they were something so different back in the day, but their practicality and their certain things have like turned them a certain way. So they had women's kind of like women's law. They had equal kind of like men and women equal like leadership pockets in a way with like the wise women or the wise sister. What were they called? The Sisters of
Wisdom.
Sisters of Wisdom. That's it.
Yeah, but that system was very much like the Aiel system.
Yeah.
Where the men led the warriors.
The tribes. Yeah.
And those women leaders too, I guess, in the women's seps. I can't remember. But like the wise women.
The shield maidens. Yeah.
But the wise women, they didn't like lead. They just like guided like the clan chiefs, and it's the same way here pretty much.
Oh man, I totally got the sense that he was starting to develop like. We didn't get it here a ton, but like he was starting to develop like different roles for these kind of barbarians. But later, when you get into the Wheel of Time, I love how he like refined that into you have the warriors, and they have a sept, and they have a like a clan, and like the sept goes across all the clans, but then the clans are like your allegiance. So like you could. It just makes like your honor system. It's like you're joining a guild, and your guild is a certain type of thing. But then
your
like,
clan is like your village.
Yeah, it's not tied to your clan.
There's
like home.
Like blacksmiths and bakers and healers.
Yeah,
and then the warriors, which dominate, and then like it goes out to the septs. And whatnot. And it's the same thing in this book because. I was reading this, and I thought that Wolfguard, for the longest time, was like the leader of his people.
I did too. And he was.
He was just, he's the son of the adopted son of the leader, and he just leads his own little sept.
Yeah, I thought so too for the longest time until he started calling that guy king. And I'm like, whoa, dude. And then I got it, and then I'm like, whoa, Harold. He was almost commanding Harold a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're actually peers, and they just respect each other. Which you got the sense of that they respect each other, but then they like went off to their own little sept. But then they came back, and he's like calling him king, and Harold's actually the genetic son of the king, whereas he's the adopted. But I'm like, oh, crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So like he sacked this kingdom, but he's not the king of it. He's just sacked it for the king, kind of thing.
Exactly. I was thinking like, so is he becoming king of this town, or not town, city?
Yeah.
Or is he going to turn over to the other king, or like... What's going to happen with that?
Yeah.
But apparently he just left and he went... How did that end? He went... Who was he looking for?
He's going to hunt the guy who killed Harold or gave the sword to Harold is riding around with the last like evil sister of wisdom. I forgot her name. And so he decided he was going to go hunt her down, even though he's panicking about like the world changing and stuff.
Yeah.
But and the city culture was really interesting to me too. Those queens were evil assholes. They were just total assholes.
Yeah. Also, what happens when you're descended from a god and no one challenges your power for 1,000 years?
Man. Terrible.
But the whole system of how the, not elected, but how they pass on the throne is super interesting.
Yeah, what was that? Can you go into that again? I don't remember that.
So, exactly. Like, the twin goddesses that were the original queens, they each had a daughter, and they inherited the throne.
Okay.
And so it goes down like that, unless one of the queens doesn't have daughters, and then the other one has two, and then they both become queens.
Okay.
And then,
that's why you have the...
Yeah. And so it's gone back and forth like that throughout the entire history of the kingdom, and so it's pretty interesting that it's one bloodline, even though it splits back and forth between the two daughters.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then like, the torture. I actually enjoyed reading the torture scenes. Believe it or not, I don't know what it is about Robert Jordan writing awesome torture scenes.
I see what you're into.
I know, right? It seems like that, but like he wrote really good scenes like that in the Wheel of Time that were just like, you like read them and they were just like, holy cow. And in this one, ingenious method of torture. Although I was laughing my ass off when like the noble in the cage would like refuse to eat like that, and he's just like, what are you doing? Look at this massive amount of food right here. He just like preferred to die. But then like I was really curious, like in that method of torture, the second one where they let him like, well, the door keeps opening. So
the floor keeps opening.
Yeah, ingenious too, to have the noise and the floor not move, and then the floor move with no noise, and then noise and floor, just like terrible. I'm like, oh god, that is so terrible. But like the one thing I was wondering is, what would happen if he did fall? You know, like they don't want him to die, right?
Yeah.
So like whatever's down there is probably super gross and nasty. But
there was a monster, and he said it was like more scared of that than anything on the planes. Made him feel unclean.
Even though it probably wouldn't have killed him.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't let him die.
But I believe he was chained to the wall, and he just pulled himself up.
Yeah, he
every
would.
time.
Or he'd be hanging on the wall. After a while, he would. But I'm like, eventually he would fall, and he was batting like some things off the chain. So I'm like, I wonder what would happen. Like, what is it? Maybe they're just a bunch of giant, gross, slimy worms or something. Like something that would just make you want to vomit, but would it really kill you, kind of thing? Yeah. Maybe it would have, though.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. That's interesting to me. But it seems like she didn't want him to.
Yeah, she definitely did not want him to die.
So I'm like, I wonder. And he never gave into that. He saved himself every time, even though he was about to go ballistic. But that's definitely very interesting.
But yeah, when we first met the queens, which is not a sore point for me, because it never really meant anything apparently, that they all tried to stop him from going to meet the queens at the beginning of the book. Yep. And he's like, no, I'm just gonna go.
There was like some special thing going on.
Secret thing. I can't remember, but
like a ceremony or something.
Yeah, secret ceremony. And then he sees the queen, and he felt this connection, some magical connection to her. And it didn't mean anything. Like, he could have killed her when he escaped. Yeah. And
he didn't, because he was like, I better know what this connection means. Yeah. And then he escapes after he puts that sex juju on her. And then and then like later, it's actually her sister that becomes tied to him.
She becomes a slave.
Yeah. And then she gives her to the king. So I'm like, you're right. I don't understand how they're tied. Like he should have just offed her then.
He could have killed him and fine. Would have changed the story. Well,
no, it might have even helped. Yeah. Who knows? That maybe Harold would be alive. That's interesting to think about. Although maybe it was like, if this is going to be a sequel, or there will be a sequel, maybe there's like a deeper thing there. But
I mean, he could have easily wrote a couple more books on it, but nothing came of it. Yeah. And so it's just kind of hanging there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of like, I wonder, what was that all about? Instead, he gives it to the king, and the wise woman again saves her. Yeah. And says, like, don't kill her. We'll tie her to you, just like we tied the other sister to the king. Wolfgar. Yeah. The king's name started with a D or something.
A B.
Or B, yeah. I forget what his name was.
Yeah.
Terrible names.
Yeah, this book had terrible names to pronounce.
So many names, oh my god. They were all like Nordic names, like Elfric and Aelwyn, and then there was a few like surprisingly normal ones. Harold, yeah, Harold. Like I kept thinking like Harold and Kumar going to White Castle. The other thing that it wasn't a big deal, but I could tell like later on he thought more about how these cultures would respond, and in this he was just pumping an early stage book out, and maybe because he didn't get a full editing, they didn't change some of this stuff. But it kind of bothered me that like the barbarians referred to the like leader as my lord. My lord. Yes, my lord. No, my lord. And I'm like, they're barbarians. They wouldn't be like, they would have a different culture, and they view themselves as different than the city people who have lords and nobles and stuff. So I think that they would have, and I think later he like really addresses that, because all of the different cultures have totally different like hierarchies and systems, and I think that's something that he might have really fleshed out more if it was going to get published fully, purchased, because an editor might have suggested that, or said, hey, let's work on this because it feels too much like we're feudal system than we are barbarian system. Yeah. Not that it would like ruin the story or anything, but it was just something that I could tell. It was like an interesting, like, oh, that's You can tell it's his first work for that. Little things like that.
Yeah, because I don't know what barbarians call them, the leaders, but it could have been like a military film, like general or something. And like,
Yeah.
because he's obviously the leader of his army that takes most presidents.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that. What about? What did you think about like the whole scene where? Well, first there's this weird assassins guild that's clearly pretty badass. They cut their tongues out, because they assassinated, the kid at the dinner.
Yeah,
there was a lot
to be Wolfgang's successor.
Oh yeah,
he wanted him to be his successor.
He was grooming him. Yeah, you know what's crazy about that is there was a lot of actually really good tidbit scenes, like when you cut them out, that you could tell just found their way into, like, mature versions of them found their way into the Wheel of Time, because like some of those scenes were actually like really, you like went into that hole that you got with Robert Jordan, like when he would describe, I don't know what it is about Robert Jordan, but he could describe like the zone of sword fighting really well.
Yeah, the sword play when they're fighting.
Like he just has this way to like make you kind of like zone in on what's happening. I don't know what it is. Like I remember Randolph Thor would go into like the sword stuff, and it was just like, oh dude, it was so awesome.
Yeah, you just picture in your mind him fighting, going through the different forms.
Yeah. I don't know what the trick is, because they say when you're writing, like, you don't want to be over descriptive for those like battles, because then you kind of like wear it down. Yeah. But he somehow finds like this strange balance where he can make it really trigger imagine, in my opinion at least.
I agree. I always thought that when he described all the forms, you get a picture of them going through these like martial arts,
right?
And like the Japanese sword style, with the katanas, and like, it's more than just like hacking and slashing. They're going through the martial arts forms against one another.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what like hailing over the mountain looks like, but
whatever he does though, you just like have this image, and it's really cool. Like you don't even know what it looks like, but it just, whatever his trick is, it's really awesome. The other thing that he does really cool is he describes warplay from the general's perspective really well.
Yes.
So like the tactics and how you're organizing your men.
I think that Robert Jordan also wrote a series of Civil War novels.
Okay.
And
I bet he did a ton of research for that and got into that stuff.
He wrote it under another name.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember. But he did a lot of research into it, and like he was a big historian about that time period.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of expert advice too on the generals and how they commanded the armies, and he brought that into his writing a lot into Wheel of Time in this book.
Oh man, I totally see that now. I forgot that he did some historical novels. I totally forgot about that. You brought that up, and I'm like, you're right. He had a different pen name for it than his Robert Jordan pen name, which is also a pen name for his fantasy stuff. I'm like, that's a great point, because in the Wheel of Time, they're amazing. Like, you're just reading chapter after chapter of Rand sitting on a horse, like, go over here, go over here. In this case, we're reading about Wolfgar, like, directing these tactics and, like, doing these things. And there's, like, the action isn't really there, but, like, it's, like, super interesting. You're super into it.
That one big battle up in the north.
Yeah.
When, I think it was, like, 10,000 against 200,000 men. Mm-hmm. And they just kept pulling the army after them. Yeah. And after them until they got to these hills. It must have been like 2 or 3 days. And they're just tiring out that army. And then they're sitting up on top of the hill, and they stopped. And they're like, why they stop? Are they going to fight us? It was like 10 to 1 odds. So it was like, it's a trap. It has to be a trap. And they eventually fought them, and they sent the other barbarian tribe, the Maasai, against them. And then they just got obliterated by the longbow. Yeah. They just kept sending out volleys, and then they hit the spikes, and they just got stopped there pretty much. Yeah. And then they were almost all wiped out, and then the other army went up against them.
Which they were infantry, essentially. Yeah, fully infantry. Because they didn't have a horse culture at all. Yeah.
But they were able to protect themselves mostly until like 200 meters, because they had shields and they could do like the turtle, and they just
Greek style.
Yeah,
Greek style shield Spartan fight.
So I got close enough, but even then they were getting destroyed once they got into 200 paces.
Yeah.
And then, but they were still outnumbered like 4-1 at that point, even with the tremendous losses from that side. And then you hear these young Altaii come up, and they're like whooping and howling like, "Oh, reinforcements!"
Yeah.
But it wasn't really reinforcement. It was just a huge group of runners.
Yeah.
That came in and destroyed them all.
Yeah.
And like,
and then they come out and they're just like, well, these things go until either everybody's dead, and there was enough runners that they knew
they were gonna destroy them all.
Yeah.
Then all those people had food then at that point for the runners.
Yeah, food for the runner. The crazy thing is, even before that, I love the tactics where they lit all the torches around the camp.
Oh, that's so
and
good.
then they would just not do anything.
They go and take a nap afterwards. They
would light them again, and then nothing would happen. Then they would light them, and something would happen. And then they would light them, and nothing would happen. And then when the guys got so used to them torches being lit and nothing happening, a strike.
Yeah.
It's like such mind games. I love it.
Because they had the torches and the circle, and they would have the horses, like a small group of people. The rest of the people are sleeping.
Yeah.
Were making rounds, and they're like, oh, they're out there, and like for nights on end, and then they got used to it, and nothing ever happened, and they went in, and
that has to be from Civil War tactics or something like. I mean, obviously, it could be tactics from much further, but I wonder if he got that in the Civil War. I was thinking it's so terrible. Yeah. You're like guards, everyone's arguing, like they're like, they're gonna come. They've got all their guards up, and then they're just getting exhausted, and finally they're like, fuck it, I'm going to bed, and then they get hit. That was really, really cool. And that's actually really awesome and realistic, because that's a smaller force, barbarian, nomadic force would probably fight. I mean, because they just live on these plains, and
especially since they had a well-deserved reputation of being amazing warriors,
right,
compared to the city guys who sit and guard a wall all day.
Right.
And they just don't do anything, because the city's unbeatable. Like no one's ever broken into the city before.
The one thing that I did like is that the barbarians did have respect for the discipline the military often showed, which for the most part, they said you do have to be cautious about this infantry because they have a good amount of standard discipline, surprisingly, for soft people is kind of how they, but the styles were totally different. And then you got oh man, I'm really curious about the concept of the oaths and the oath stone and because I don't know if it trickled into the Aes Sedai, because they have the oath rod and they take this oath not to lie, and then
but there's no punishment when they do if they touch it, and in this, even if you swore an oath and later you touched it, you'd still die from lying.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. The magic system is when he killed the one lady because they were putting that vision in front of him. And he just throws his dagger into it, which could have killed him if it was true, but it was totally false. So it just killed that lady.
Because that dagger, it wasn't just a dagger. He had that dagger for
his whole life,
and it was bound to him in a way.
Yeah, and
that's why it worked. That lie rebounded on her,
right?
And it was the truth. It was rebounded on him.
And then when the evil sister of wisdom possessed the other guy, the warrior on the battlefield, the second time, Izo or something, Eo, I forget his name.
I think it's Izo.
But when he throws the stone at him, he just is engulfed in flames because he's essentially not him anymore, which is a lie. Yeah. It's him, but it's not him, and because of that, it's just essentially a giant lie. So it just engulfs him in flames. It's a really interesting concept. I'm so curious. I wish maybe there is some documentation on that, but what are the things that drives this imagination this way? Because we see it come again and crop into the Wheel of Time with the Oath Rod and the Aes Sedai, this concept of like truth in magic and oaths, and then how people like can still find ways like to speak, because like the Aes Sedai can't lie, but they get so good at like telling partial truths and half truths, and like it's like almost second nature to them. It almost makes them worse.
Yeah, because like they might be saying everything that's true, but they're still lying.
Yeah, so it's like intent didn't matter, only the actual. But it's so interesting because no matter what in his imagination, something like sparked this whole like thought about this magic system being tied to this.
Yeah, I can see that. He was really big into history.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what was that? 1800s.
Yeah.
You know, people made oaths and they had to stick to the word. Mm-hmm. And maybe just was curious, like, what if people had to stick to the word?
Like forced, and it never. Yeah. It's
like, you know, you make that oath.
And then, what if it meant like you, on penalty of death, you couldn't break it, kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. I love the concepts that come out of it. Torture. Well, we obviously got a badass. I thought he was developing some of these characters for potential like future works, like the kitchen girl.
Oh yeah, she just kind of was in and out for no reason. Yeah, just gave him some food
and then like later he's like, "Here's your money. Get it. Go. You can go back home now." Yeah. And she's like,
"Okay,
I want to stay."
Yeah.
It's like little things. It's little these tidbits that you could tell he was getting to something, but like in this story, it just didn't have the depth that it needed to have, and that's understandable for a first story. To be honest, I think that. I mean, I could think like to develop a story as deep and broad as Roshar. Is that the right? Is that the world in? Oh no, is that was Roshar Sanderson?
That's Sanderson.
What is the world called in Wheel of Time again? God, we got to reread this book. This is like terrible. We shouldn't have forgot this, but it's been a long time. But anyway,
do they even have a name?
No, I don't know. I think it does have a name. Yeah, it has a name because then people come from the other side of the world. This Shai-Chan. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Oh my god, dude.
But those are just the returners from the.
I'm pretty sure it has a. I know, but it has a name. The whole world. But
maybe because I know they split up into different countries.
Yeah, it's good. But you could see that like he has a start to this. You know, it's like super good. What do you think of the All High? Or
Most High.
Most High. I keep calling them All High because they are all high.
Yeah. I don't know. They're interesting. I wish I got more of them or more backstory a little bit.
Like, why do they want the stability so much? I'm curious.
Yeah, like, why do they care? Obviously, no one can get to them or what they are. We don't even know what they are because they fly down in their little wagons.
Yeah, their little rickety wagons.
Yeah.
I imagine, like, a floating, rickety car, kind of, like, just trying to get down there. Just barely keeping their technology alive.
Yeah. I just picture them, like, trying to cling to the past even more than Wolfguard. Because, like, we were the original people on this planet. Yeah. And then we brought all these people in, and they were doing, I don't know, experiments or something with them. Yeah. And then it got out of hand. I can't remember what happened, but they lost control. Yeah.
Well, they said they were pulling things in, and eventually they pulled something in that had immense power to strike back, and it basically, like, put them all into a essentially a Dark Ages. Yeah. And so they lost control of everything. It just like everybody went their own ways, and then they're probably trying to redevelop society, to be honest. Well, they're probably like, if we keep at this for thousands of years, we'll eventually get to the point where society is like, you know. Little did they know, though, it seems like Wolfgar's the one who actually set that on end.
Well, he's going to make his own society now. But they're pretty much like the Age of Legends. Yeah. And except they're still around, I guess, in this book. And trying to control stuff.
Yeah, the Age of Legends, as if they were still there a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, like the remnants of Age of Legends. Like they still have stuff, but just not
the historical scale of these things is so interesting to me. Same thing with Sanderson's Stormlight. Because in book 1 you read like 3,000. You're talking like 3,000, and then you think historically 3,000 years, and you're like, holy shit, that's like far. But it's not quite as far as 10,000 years, which there's a lot of evidence nowadays that we have had pretty advanced human civilizations 10,000 years ago, and maybe even more. There's some evidence that maybe even it was further. So then you're like, okay, so maybe this cycle up-down thing has been going around for a while. But I really like Robert Jordan's concept in both of this book and Wheel of Time. It's prevalent that, like, at the time in the past, they were way ahead of where we are now. Like, way ahead. So you've got this cycle, but something has happened to take that all away. Yeah. Bring you back down to the grassroots of tribal knowledge, essentially.
Because in real time, it was pretty much drilling the hole in the fabric, and then set off a huge war, and then breaking happened. And this one is the Most High bringing in specimens, and one of them got out of control and destroyed the world, and now
it's such like a crazy concept, because you could see us like maybe in the future trying to harness like energy from a black hole or something and fucking up space-time, and then like you know what I mean, like this kind of shit. It's like kind of an interesting concept, because who knows? Obviously in our world we're like at the point where we're not like there, but at some point maybe they would be doing some crazy stuff, trying to understand multiverse dimensions, or
the 500 years we open another dimension and they come in.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But I love the thought. I love like the idea that like we kind of screwed up going too far, and in this, I wonder. I also wonder what drives Robert Jordan's thought about like the concept of like the difference between men and women. Like it's an interesting concept, because there's obviously ambiguity at different spectrums, but if you talk about it in the sense that like you got this like traditional way that people are and act, and he uses that as an interesting story element tool with pure equality often, which is really unique to me. It's like a different view of equality but different. You know what I mean? I don't know how to say it, but it's like it's different than what I think we think of it modernly in our time, at least. And I'm curious what drove those thoughts, like what, because in this I did feel that. Well, let's think. The female characters in the book, some good, some bad. The bad ones were, wow, they were bad. The good ones were good. I mean, really good. And then, so there's some neutral ones, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that, but then you go to the Wheel of Time, and like there's a lot of good, very strong female characters in the Wheel of Time, and some of them just, oh my god, the power dynamic that was going on in that book was like wearing me down a little bit mentally, is the best way that I could say it. And I talked to a lot of people about that, and it's not just because I'm a dude, just these characters' personalities are overbearing at best. Worse than most times. But I didn't get the sense there was that many of them in this book. Not like that. The bad ones maybe, but not the good ones. They were like...
I mean, the only good female ones in this one was
the sister of wisdom. Yeah.
Wisdom that helped.
The historical woman, the Wanderer.
Yeah, but she wasn't really in a position of power.
Yeah.
That also made me upset too.
It seemed like she should have had a way bigger role, right?
Yeah. Because
she was like the key.
She was the key, and then
all she did was say, use bows.
Oh no. Like, that wasn't it. Wolfgar's like, tell me the answers I need, and she's like, I don't know. And then he left and got captured, and I don't know how long of a time period went through.
Yeah. It
But
was
then-
definitely. It seemed like it was definitely a few months.
Yeah.
So.
But then back at the home base, she found out like stuff about the culture,
Yeah.
and then she found out the climate change and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and she knew the answers, but Wolfguard was like, "Tell me the answers without asking the proper questions."
Yeah.
and
It's like what answers?
and then it's like, "You knew these the whole time." It's like, you didn't. I didn't know what your problem was.
Yeah, I didn't even know what your problem
Like,
was.
come on, dude, like.
Yeah, he was pretty gung ho. I did like that a little bit, only because Wolfgar seemed too perfect in other ways sometimes, right? As a hero.
Yeah.
And then then he at least was a little gung ho on that, and a little gung ho on like the changing of times.
Changing of times.
Like the times are changing, and I want to resist this.
Yeah,
blah,
he's
blah,
like,
blah.
I'll never become a farmer, but they call him like mud grubbers or dirt grubbers.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you look down on those farmers who supply all that. Also that, and he was pretty sexist
Yeah, you're right.
overall. I mean, better than other people maybe, but still.
He didn't like mistreat, but his culture, you could clearly tell that his culture defined like the way that he thought about it, even if it was pretty good, like comparatively.
Yeah. I mean, also, this book was written 40 years ago, so. in
Well,
the
and they're
80s,
trying to emulate the barbarian mentality too, so, you know.
There's that. So I'm not like. I don't think like Robert Jordan's some huge sexist.
I definitely don't, because he
yeah.
does. He has some of the most powerful female characters.
But I can see how it is. It's just a culture he wrote about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's how they view a lot of stuff.
yeah. I'm always curious what drives like some of the thought, because he does put women in like humongously, and a lot of his societies are female led, like female above male, which is always kind of neat to read too, because it's something that he was exploring in a time when I was at that event with George R.R. Martin where he was speaking, and he said, like, when you think about it, sci-fi and fantasy was always so far ahead of everything else because these authors were thinking about things differently, because they had to write about totally different worlds. Like, and then he gave the example of Star Trek. He's like, sci-fi, if you think about this, in the 60s, 60s and 70s, you know, height of the Cold War, and Star Trek comes out, and they've got they're exploring this concept that in the future, the real future, Earth is just Earth. It's one country. And so suddenly you have an Asian on the bridge. You have a black woman on the bridge. You have a Russian on the bridge as and during the height of the Cold War. And then you have Spock, who's the epitome of what you would think as the worst that you could have, because he's actually half Vulcan and half human as like a half-breed in a context of where humanity is like whole. And you think about some of that and you're like, when was that? You're right. Holy crap. Yeah. You think about that. And so sci-fi fantasy has been ahead of that. I think part of it is because they've been forced to think about the scenarios, the different possibilities, but also the different cultures that would lead to these stories that you're telling about.
Star Trek is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
And that is also it was the first time a black woman and a white male kissed on screen on TV.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean,
it's a lot of groundbreaking stuff they're pushing, and it goes into sci-fi fantasy, like you're saying.
Yeah, and nobody even really talks about that being these groundbreaking things, because it just falls into this sci-fi bucket, I guess. Fantasy bucket,
yeah,
but like...
It's sad, because sci-fi and fantasy is kind of looked down upon, like, other... not genders, genres.
Yeah.
You got classic literature, and you got historic literature, and nonfiction, and, people take those seriously, but, you got these fantasy books that are pushing
the
equality and all these things that
like way before anything was acceptable, which is really really interesting to me. It's something that I think there's a huge gap in, like the concept of what like these like classic literary works or like groundbreaking cinema or whatever you want to call it. It's really interesting. And so and I think Robert Jordan has a lot of really cool stuff in his Wheel of Time books, and I think a lot of it originated here, or he was at least starting to like build these ideas.
Definitely.
Which
women in power.
Yeah.
How they interact with men.
Yeah.
How they deal with the physical differences of men and women.
Yep. Oh my God! I mean the Aiel and the Shield Maidens are like one of the best examples of that, and it's just really really cool. I'm really glad we got to read it, and I'm really glad that I know that in his will, I guess, he said like it was his good luck charm. He kept it always because he thought it was his good luck charm. But then he had it. I guess he had it in his will that it would be burned when he died.
Yeah.
And so when he passed away, I guess they didn't burn it, and his wife decided to allow it to be published for us. And I'm very happy for that.
He passed away in 2003, I want to say.
I think that sounds right, yeah.
And so it's been 16 years now.
Yeah.
So it didn't come out right away. She must have
debated about it for a while.
Yeah. Decided to publish
it. And it came out, did it come out on his birthday? Or it was very near his birthday? Because I know his birthday just happened. I think we are going to release this very fast, but just in case we don't, it is today, Friday, October 18th. So to give you a perspective of time, because sometimes we do record these specials and save them for special events. Not everything comes out snippity-doo-dah, so to speak. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts, comments?
No, nothing off the top of
nothing
my
on
mind.
your notes that you're thinking? Yeah. I'm trying to think if there was anything else major. Like a lot of it we can't really answer, and we can't speculate because there is no answer. So we kind of just got what we got, you know?
I'll add this, that since we're talking about the differences in like power and whatnot, that how Wolfguard and some noble women both got raped by each other by the Queen of Atlanta.
You're right, they did.
Because she put that
spell,
magic powder on
that
the
sex powder
lady, that she lost control of herself, and then Wolfguard was chained up on a bed or something with a mouth gag, and he couldn't fight anything. So she like made that happen. They had sex, and she pretty much got to rape both of them while doing nothing herself. Yeah,
that's a really interesting concept. She essentially raped two people without actually doing anything, but she forced them essentially. And that was kind of twisted. And I definitely felt a lot more bad for her than Wolfgar, because he was kind of just like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Like he didn't, what is he going to do? Anyway, he was gagged and chained. But then the queen went ahead and raped him too.
Yeah.
Again, right after that. So he was just kind of used.
Yeah. And it's weird because in today's society, we think that as rape, but like in 1980, when Robert Jordan wrote this, I feel like he didn't consider Wolfgar as getting raped.
Maybe he didn't. You're right. Maybe because he didn't even think. Maybe he's a barbarian, so he's just like, whatever. But you're right. I mean, that was like totally the point. But then you could tell, like the way that the story and dialogue went, you felt a lot more bad for her.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I mean, that makes sense. But at the same time, you can't diminish the fact that Wolfgar was just raped twice in a row. Like, completely.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see the Moors change over, 1980 to 2019 now. Yeah. And, like, we can recognize that, he was raped. But back then, I feel like, he just had sex and he didn't really care. Yeah. I think you're right. That's a really interesting social construct, or social concept. There we go. Not construct. It's not a construct that would be bad. There are social constructs, but social concept. That's really interesting. That's a great point. And the abuse he went through too. Oh yeah, like it was terrible. Yeah, especially in the second dungeon. And it was twisted stuff. He did get to kill that prison keeper though. Yeah. What was his name?
Sort of like I can't remember. Started with an S. I know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But all right, well, folks, that was a great special edition. I hope you enjoy reading Warriors of Altaii. Remember that if you are reading it and you haven't read any Robert Jordan yet, understand that this was his first book ever, and that this is more like a seed that should never really be published. It's really published because we were given a gift to see like an insight into someone who becomes a prolific writer.
But I feel if it was published in 1980, it
would
would have been
done
like
fine.
groundbreaking for its time.
I think you're right.
It
Yeah,
would have been new. These roles of power reversed.
yeah. There was a lot of great stuff in there. I'm just glad that he got to do more of that in the Wheel of Time, and it was like even more refined.
Yeah, definitely much more refined.
Yeah.
He definitely in the past 15 years, whatever it was, really grew.
Yeah, you're right, because he did 4 Conan books after this, and then he did he did 4 Conan books, and then the second movie version of the book, and then he was like, I'm done with Conan, and they tried to get him to write a lot more. He said, no, I'm done. He published several more, but he didn't write anymore, and then he got into Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
I think that was it. I think he got right into it. Well, minus his Civil War books.
Yeah, that was somewhere in between, or the same time as the Conan books.
Yeah, he was doing them all. Yeah, it was probably, you're right, it was probably like 15 years or so. So, something really cool. Another reason we got to get into Wheel of Time is they are currently filming.
Oh.
Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time now. And the one thing that I think Ben and I both want about this series is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to follow perfect. The feel. It's always about the feel for adaptions more than anything else. It doesn't have to follow everything perfectly. And obviously same as Game of Thrones, you got so many characters, you can't follow them all perfectly.
Yeah.
But if you're going to combine characters, combine them so that you don't lose the feeling you get when you read that series. That's what you need more than anything else. And I heard also that they took some unique, not unique, but maybe progressive casting roles,
choices,
which I'm okay with in today's. I just hope that they also, if they choose to do that, they have to stay consistent, because I'm like a historian kind of feel, and Robert Jordan had these cultures all set up. So if you're gonna take the view that the people of Emmons Field are a certain way, just be consistent with it.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool if you want to toy around with that in a progressive way. I actually love it because, these are diverse worlds that Robert Jordan writes, and he actually describes many people that way. But I just want the consistency to be there then. Not, the consistency has to be there. Like the Aiel, they'll have so much described about them, they probably just need to be how they're described in the book.
Yeah.
The Aiel probably just need to be the Aiel, which are basically tall Nordic people. They talk too much about
super
them.
tanned, though, right?
They are, because they live in a desert.
Yeah.
Well, they get tan, but they're not born tan.
Oh,
they often have freckles, sun freckles and things like that, light eyes.
Because they have light eyes and hair.
Light hair.
Blonde.
That's why they're always covered, because they're trying to protect their skin, because their skin's not evolved for living in a desert, so to speak.
They're not always covered. They just walk around.
No, they're almost always covered. They always try to stay as covered as possible.
I don't think so.
I think so. We'll have to check, and next time we read the Wheel of Time, folks. But it's going to be exciting. So I'm going to give it my support regardless, because I want to see it grow.
Yeah, as long as the actors can act, I'll be happy.
They're all new, so
doesn't matter if they're new or old. I just want them to be able
to act. It just can't be cheesy.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be a challenge.
Also, if they could practice with the sword actually, so they could fight and not do a bunch of 100 cuts in a 1 minute scene.
I agree.
Yeah.
That would be a lot better, especially because of the focal point on swordsmanship in those books.
Yeah.
The art of it, that would be fantastic. So, all right. With that, folks, enjoy Warrior of Altaii. I know we did. I hope you do. And we'll see you again when we get back into the standard flow, which will be book 2, I think. by this point. I think by the time, well, if it's not book 2, you'll definitely see book 1, but book 1 or book 2, or maybe even book 3 of the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. And October 22nd, the final book, book 5 of that series comes out, which is why we're reading through book 1 and 2 right now. Cheers.
Yep. Cheers.
All right. All right. Cool. Nice little bonus episode. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Lit Literature. If you liked us, please check out our social media at Lit Literature 1 at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't hesitate to join in on the conversation. We appreciate the conversation, the questions, book recommendations, anything of that sort. Join in right on the social media websites. And don't forget to check us out at our website, litliterature.com, and our upcoming projects, though there aren't many now besides Lit Literature, you can find at lyket.net, Lyket. We do have a Patreon account, but if you truly want to support us, please like and share. Cheers.